Have you ever considered hosting a yoga podcast? What's it really like behind the mic? Today we're diving into just that. I'm excited to introduce Adrianne Jerrett, podcast host of All Mats Taken. We'll be sharing the wins, the challenges, and the constant relearning as podcast hosts. Whatever your age, the podcast journey is similar to yoga, a practice. We're excited to share our experiences and insights, so let's get started. Welcome to the Youthful Older Yogi Podcast. I'm MJ Waddell, your yogi host and founder of Share Yoga. I've been practicing, teaching, and loving yoga for over 25 years. I'm an advocate of movement, creativity, and staying healthy in mind and body in the prime time of your life. It's never too late to start, and there's a lot of healthy years ahead. So let's start now. Hi, everybody, and thank you so much for tuning in to the Youthful Older Yogi. I'm MJ Waddell, the creator and founder of Share Yoga, and also your host for the podcast, The Youthful Older Yogi. I'm really excited. I have my first international guest on today from New Zealand. We have just connected in the past couple weeks. I have been listening to her podcast and following her and watching some of her webinars. We'll get into all of that. But let me tell you a little bit about Adrianne Jerrett. So she is the founder of Jerrett Digital, and she creates and designs websites that give mindful business owners the confidence to share their offers without tech overwhelm. Tech overwhelm, that's me. So I'm like your perfect client. She's also a certified vinyasa, yin yoga, and prenatal educator, a mom to a human and a cat. She also is the host of All Mats Taken podcast. That's where I've been listening to her. And she explores strategies to help yoga teachers build profitable business and enjoy it along the way. And as with most yoga educators, she's had and worn many hats previous to becoming an educator. I found it fascinating that she has I think it's called Bachelor's of Science in New Zealand. There might be another title for it, in ecology and biodiversity and marine biology, and a certificate in captive wild animal management. I thought that was amazing. And she traveled the globe solo by herself. So thank you so much for joining us today on the podcast, Adrianne. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you for having me. It's very excited to be a guest instead of a podcast host, so I really appreciate it.
All right, well, we're just going to start right in. So I always ask my guests, can you share a little bit how yoga found its way into your life and what your initial reaction was to it?
Yeah, so I started practicing around, I think it's a little bit less than 10 years ago. The years have kind of like blurred, but around 10 years ago now. I was somewhere in my mid or slightly late 20s. And like many of us, I discovered yoga asana first at my local gym. And I was pretty much just going on one of my weight loss kind of frenzies that I've had over the years. It's always been a yo-yo struggle for me. And I was also practicing like Pilates, and I was basically just going to whatever classes at the gym worked into my schedule. And to be honest, I was kind of drawn in very initially to these practices because I could trick myself into thinking that if I just rolled around on the floor, then that would be exercise and that was good enough. But of course, I think as probably everyone listening knows, they're not quite that easy. And so that sort of was really great for just getting me hooked, I guess. And then I just started like searching for at-home videos because I wanted to do it after work as well and before work, and just all day practice asana where I could, and there wasn't enough classes at the gym. That's where I found Ali Van Fossen, who I've followed her diligently since then, and she was just starting out online. This was on YouTube as well, and she taught like quite focused on like challenging asana practices. But as she went on, she started incorporating more of like philosophy and breath work and meditation into her teaching. And so I've kind of got taken down that track as well. I didn't really understand much about the philosophy behind yoga, and I knew there was like spiritual aspects, but I didn't really get it or learn about much of it until probably 2020 when I took my first YTT, and it was after quite a traumatic incident. And then the power of that practice and learning more about that just really clicked for me on that deeper level. And I remember at one point just thinking to myself, like, oh, this is why it works. Like, I get it. This is why I'm so drawn to it. Because I had sort of struggled with a lot of depression as well and the time over the years, and I always came back to like my mat, and it really helped me with that. So I still have only very much just scratched the surface. It's like the more you kind of start digging, the more you realize how enormous it is. And like you mentioned just before we started the call, you're learning like mudras now, and that's something I have not even really like got into at all. So there's so much, and I just find it very exciting. My sort of ADHD brain is always looking for new things, so I get bored quickly, and within the scope of yoga, I can still just keep practicing and deepen my learning and understanding of it without just completely getting sideswiped and learning something new. So that's one reason why I kind of started the podcast as well, because I do believe it's such a powerful practice, and it's helped me so much in my life, and it can just really help other people's lives so much. So if I can help other yoga teachers to spread the word even more, then that's like a ripple effect, and it just makes communities better and everyone's better and the world's better ultimately, in my core belief. So yeah, that's kind of
Yeah,
how it's tracked with me in my life with yoga.
yeah. And I think also when I first went to my first yoga class, I had the same type of thing. I was at the gym. I've been in theater my whole life, and I was on a national tour, and I was always working out at the gym and staying in shape and dancing and everything. And I thought, I'll just go take this easy little stretch yoga thingy. And it was actually life changing. I never went back to the gym after that. I'm like, what is this? And why do I feel so alive? Like, instead of just, on the treadmill or lifting weights or stretching or whatever I had to do to stay in my dancing shape. So,
Mhm.
and also that's how I was attracted through the asana. And then my yoga teacher training, I didn't even know about any of the other, limbs, nothing. So, and it's such a vast subject. You'll never know everything. No one ever will. So I think now I've been 29 years practicing, and almost 20 years teaching and educating. And it's like, I still feel like I only know about a smidgen of yoga, but the philosophies, I remember in my YTT thinking, why do I need this? And now I'm like going, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I have it. So I
Mhm.
understand that same feeling. Um, so thank you for sharing that. And so you do All Mats Taken podcasts. I think you just started that recently. Am I correct with that?
Yes, so I had the All Mats Taken Summit. The first one was in 2022, and then I didn't do one in 2023 because when I started planning it, I found out I was pregnant. So I was like, probably shouldn't do this in my first trimester because I hear that's the like potential nightmare one, which luckily it was all right, but I was exhausted the whole time, so there's no way I could have. And then I was like, I really want to do it again before my son is born, because otherwise then I have no idea when it's going to happen. So I ran that when I was like 7 months pregnant, and that was in March last year. And then it just got a lot of momentum, and there was a lot of excitement around it, and it just was a really great event. And I didn't want to completely let that drop off when I went into maternity leave. And so I, in my madness, decided that I would start a podcast, and I pre-recorded a bunch of episodes and interviews, and I had about 3 months all set up. I've only released one every fortnight because there's no way I could do weekly. And yeah, so I kind of started that, and it was like, I think I launched it a week or two. It might have been a week before my son was born. So that was in May last year. So not quite a year, about like 8 months. Well,
Yeah,
yes, he's 8 months old. So yes, 8 months it's been around. So
that's
it's still
amazing.
pretty new.
I wanted to pop in and thank you for listening to The Youthful Older Yogi. I love bringing you great guests, education, and ways to stay youthful in mind and body. If you love the show and want to help me make it even better, please consider becoming a supporter. You get to choose how much and how often you give, and there's no commitment. And remember, I donate a portion of every dollar I receive to charity. For 2025, I've chosen United Nations World Food Program. Just click the support button in the show notes. And just as helpful is sharing the show with others. Thank you again so much for listening. And now let's get back to the podcast.
When you said you had the wild idea to start a podcast, which I did too. Actually, I started out as an experiment for me. I just invited people to do a 3-week Zoom call with different yoga teachers, just talking about, I was really just needing connection, to tell you the truth, because I'm single, I live by myself, I don't have kids, and the pandemic changed so many things in my life. So I was looking for connection. And then those 3 episodes, a friend of mine said, you can make that into a podcast. I'm like, what? And and I do it. I had to look up fortnightly, which actually is like every 2 weeks. Like,
Yeah.
that was like, so me too. I only do twice a month because the time that it takes is, for me, it's just a lot with other work things that are going on in my life. But that's how it started for me. And but your podcast, it was like a summit in quotes. So it was for yoga teachers and business owners, and you were bringing in guests to try to educate them. Is that the basis?
Yeah. So the summit is like a virtual conference, effectively, and it brings together yoga teachers. I think there's been the odd person that's in a different profession, but primarily yoga teachers to help teach other yoga teachers how to grow the business side of things. Because one thing I noticed when I was doing my YTT, so I did it in 2020, and the whole country was locked down. Like, I know everywhere was a little bit different, but New Zealand, we were quite intense in terms of what the lockdowns were like. Like, everything was closed. There were no studios open. There was nothing, and the whole country was closed. You couldn't get out or in or anything. And so I finished my YTT, and there was a small business module in it, but it was all focused on like how to teach in a studio, and like you should be starting class on time and ending class on time and all these kind of things, which was really practical, but it just didn't apply to anything at the time. I was like, well, I can't get a job in a studio because I started my YTT for me, but then I just got excited about it, and I did decide that I would like to teach, but I was like, how? Where do I go about it? And I had a business. I was a Pinterest manager at the time. So I had like a little bit of marketing stuff online. And then I had this idea for the summit from this woman that hosts summits that I was following. And I thought that would be a really great idea. And I thought it would be a good idea to just collect a bunch of experts and have them help share how to get into the online space in this kind of age. It's changed a little bit now again because we're more in person now, luckily. But at the time, it was very focused on like tech and getting online. I had a few clients in the wellness sort of space. They weren't specifically yoga teachers, but one thing, they just wanted to do the healing and the teaching part, and just all the online tech stuff was too much. Whereas it doesn't come naturally to me, but I've taught myself a lot over the years, and I just really love it for some reason. Like, it just like my techie sort of brain clicks. So I thought, if I can help more yoga teachers in terms of setting up their business, then that's a greater ripple effect in helping people find yoga than just me on my own trying to teach a few classes. So I did start with like a YouTube channel, and it just wasn't, I mean, it was just a beginning thing. I didn't put much time into it, but I was filming everything outside, which I had to at the time. And then winter hit, and I lived in the mountains, so there was a lot of snow and it was cold, and I was like, I can't film outside now. So what am I gonna do? So it kind of like died a little bit of a death. I mean, my videos are still up there. I haven't checked them. For all I know, something's gone viral, but you can find them. And yeah, I just kind of wanted to figure out how you're supposed to teach in this online landscape. And I thought, why not share it with other people as well while I'm trying to learn that?
Yeah, I think hybrid. I used to teach yoga for 5 years full time. And that was because of a divorce and I had to, make a living, and I taught full time and I got burnt out completely. So that was in the like 2010s. And then since the pandemic, I only teach one class a week in person because I, when I taught full time, I didn't have my own practice. I was exhausted. I wasn't respecting my own practice because I just couldn't. I just didn't have the time. And
Mm.
so now I occasionally have an online student, but that's what I started out like. So it'll be 2 years in May or almost 3 years, and that I started trying to be online, taking courses, doing a million different things, and going. Whenever anybody says it's easy, I just want to take them by the shoulders and shake them because it's only easy if you know how to do it. So, and we have a 30-year age difference, Adrian and I. So you grew up in a computer aged world. I did not.
Kind of. I am still a child of the 90s, so I didn't grow up with phones or computers like
Yeah. Well,
when I
I
was a
was in
kid.
my 40s before I got my first
Yeah.
computer. So there you
Yeah.
go. All I did was learn how to do email and iTunes. That's it.
Mhm.
So, and that's what I wanted to kind of talk about today. I think there's a lot of teachers that teach yoga and want to share, their yoga and their healing and their wellness that are my age, over 50, and they just don't because unless they have the resources or one of their kids or somebody that can help them, they just don't because it's a different landscape now for the teachers that are older.
Mm.
And I'm saying like 50 and beyond that have been teaching for decades and decades. So that's where I was wondering for you, like, I don't know what your age range is in clients, if I might be your oldest client right now.
I'm not sure. I know I'm not sure exactly how old one of my clients is. She's definitely, I think she's around 65.
Okay. Well, that's what I am. So, okay.
Yeah.
So, but what
I
skills
haven't asked her.
you haven't asked her? That's
I
okay.
haven't asked her.
You don't need to ask her.
No.
And so, what has been the most frustrating part of building your online presence as an educator, as a, digital creator?
I think it's a lot of just so much information getting thrown at you, and everyone's like, this is the best way to do it. This is the best way to do it. This is how you should do it. And there's not really one right answer, and it's very easy to get distracted when something's not maybe working out, to be like, oh, well, maybe I'm doing it all wrong and I should be doing this instead. So for me, it's like that kind of marketing side of it in my journey for growing rather than like the tech part, because I'm good at the tech part. But even just figuring that part out at the start was a bit overwhelming. You're like, which like camera should I be using? Like the mics, I still get confused on which is like a good mic. Like I have one, but I need a better one. In terms of like having one on your person. So I think that's probably been pretty overwhelming. And after talking to so many like successful yoga teachers in the business world, one thing that I've really cottoned onto, and especially this year, to be honest, that's really clicked for me is that there isn't one correct way, and how you do it is how you do it. And if you invest your time into like get very clear on what sort of marketing strategy you want, what do you want to like learn, what do you want to get out of it, and stick to that one path, then you're going to see more success than just getting frustrated with that. Because like a lot of the big teachers, you see them and they look like they're everywhere, you know, like they look like they're all over YouTube, they look like they're all over Instagram, like all the things. Everyone that I've spoken to that has that, they specifically like focused on one at a time and just decided to learn that one thing and do everything and like take it back down to like baby steps, like so you're not getting overwhelmed. Because I think as soon as we start to get overwhelmed, that's when it's just all too much, and then we kind of lose the consistency as well. So that's something I definitely need to call in for myself a lot. And as I mentioned, I kind of like have shiny thing syndrome sometimes, and I'll be like, oh, that looks interesting. And I just do too many pieces of things, and then I don't necessarily get forward as much as I should because I'm doing so many little things, which I keep constantly even saying this. I'm like, you're doing too many things right now. I've got like one thing I need to focus on, and I'm trying to do like 5 things. But I think that's probably the most frustrating thing, is not knowing where to go and who to trust. And that's kind of one reason why I've got all mats taken, because there's like a lot of different teachers, and I hope that people don't get into it and be like, oh, I'm quite overwhelmed by the summit. And I do say this, when you're going into it, just look for someone that you really resonate with, and then you can connect with them and learn more from them, rather than being like, oh, there's 25 speakers here, or there's 25 podcast episodes to go back on, and just getting overwhelmed and thinking you need to do everything that they all say. Like, find someone, pick that thing, and ignite your curiosity. Like, instead of going into something and being like, wow, this is way too overwhelming, I'm too old to learn all this tech, I don't understand. Because I've had people my own age that have done that with tech. They're like, I don't understand, it's too confusing. And you're like, but you just do this. And they're like, I don't understand, I can't do it. And you're like, just click that one button there. And they're like, no, it's too much, I can't do it. And so I think the like mindset is really important with it. Like, obviously I can't speak from being older, but my dad, for example, he's 65. He's very tech savvy. Like, he knows way more than I would. He designs fusion software and like all kinds of things. So it obviously depends on your background, but I don't think like age and being too old is the thing. It's just like your commitment to something. Because I see it with all kinds of things. My ex was like, oh, I'm too old to learn how to surf. And I was like, why?
No, it
You're
is
32, like, and he's like, no, it's too old, I cannot. So he'll never learn how to surf now, but whereas I would like to. But yeah, so
amazing.
I hope that answered your question.
No, yeah, it is. It's a mindset. I love what tech can do. I love learning it. It just takes me watching the tutorials maybe 10 times before it sinks in, and it's a time suck. So I just really have to dedicate, say, I call it the University of Self-Taught Technology I go to every day. I go to my own university, and I spend maybe 15 to 30 minutes trying to learn one new thing or one new term, literally, because there is so much being thrown at you, and you're like, what does that mean? What does that mean? And so it's baby steps. I'm like, I've got a system now for how I do my podcast. I'm sure you do too. And I'm creating a retreat, so it's brand new. I have to do step by horribly boring step. So, but if I don't do it, it won't come to fruition. So I think mindset is really important. And I think this is where you can pull in your yoga tools for focus. And it's almost like you're just focused, pratyahara. You're just focused on one thing, which is very difficult for anybody that lives in today's society, because distraction. So I think having those yoga tools has really helped me. I know they have. So
yeah. I think it was something about like when you mentioned at the start with like the baby steps and picking things. Like I think that's a really beautiful practice, and try not to compare yourself to anyone else's journey. Like you mentioned, like you started learning like computers and stuff in your 40s, whereas I learned in my 20s. So there's it's just like don't compare yourself, and you don't know what other tools and resources other people have. So I like a lot of the big YouTube yogis, for example, they seem to have partners who do all of the editing and all of that for them. They're not just a one person band. So if you're a one person band, or your like partner or whoever, you don't have someone in your world that is an expert video editor, then that you've just got to start from where you're starting. So, and like you mentioned, our yoga practice should help us with that. So just like stepping back a bit and just taking it little piece by little piece. I
Yeah.
think that's really good.
And what is one thing that you're really proud so far of accomplishing?
Definitely the summit. It's a mammoth project, like a months of consuming my entire life. And it's not something that I have at all done for financial gain at the moment. Hopefully, maybe one day it'll pay me back for all the time I've put in. It's definitely a labor of love, but I had to learn so much to pull that off in terms of tech as well, just organizational skills, like communication skills, just so much. So that, and I, as I mentioned, I tend to get shiny thing syndrome. So there's a lot of things that I start, and if I don't finish them within a certain amount of time, that's it. I'm bored and I want to do the next thing. Not just with like online stuff. Like I've got how many sewing projects in my life that didn't get finished in time. um, and that just being like several months to pull something off and like have it completed and have people enjoy it in the end, that's definitely been something I've been pretty proud of accomplishing.
Congratulations. That is a big, when you really are enjoying what you're doing. And I think a lot of times people don't take their wins, and they go, oh, I did that, and then they go on to the next thing. And I think it's really important to, I'm very proud of myself for what I've learned on my own so far and what I've accomplished. And I have so many other things that I want to do, especially the retreat. That's my main focus right now. And that's why I found you, and you're going to help me with a landing page. Literally, I'm like, I've done so many tutorials on landing pages. My eyes just go blurry. So
Yeah,
also
I
knowing
think,
what your strengths are. And I'm just,
yeah,
I'm have strengths in certain things, and then other things I just have to surrender. It's just surrendering. So
yeah,
congratulations on creating that summit. I'm
thank you.
and well,
And
and now are you having a new one coming up, or?
yeah, my plan's end of May. I haven't set dates yet. I've been kind of like delaying. I like decided that I'm gonna do it, and then I decided end of May, and I need to like pick myself up and actually like organize a few things and get into action a little bit. But my child is not the best at sleeping, so I've just been holding off determining dates yet because I'm like, I don't actually know how this is going to work yet. It's going to be a lot different from the last couple, just in terms of the live event, and mainly for two parts, partly for my own energy in terms of what I put into the free side of it and what I put into people who are willing to like pay for the upgraded version. So people who are paying, they are usually the most engaged. They're going to have a much more rewarding experience. Of course, they'll still be the free experience, but I often found with the free live things, it was all the people that were paying were showing up to the free ones anyway. So paid people, you get all my attention. Free guys, you still get all of the presentations. So it'll be a little bit different. And yeah, I'm just not sure when I'm supposed to do it at the moment. I'm trying to get 7 p.m. bedtime in, but often that's 9 p.m. bedtime, and I can't do that for the next 4 months. So we'll see how that works.
Interesting how people think, oh, you have a podcast. How successful you are. Like I pay to do this podcast. It's like, it's not, people think I haven't gained any monetary anything, only my private yoga students and, a class that I teach that's, pennies. So it is a really real thing. And I also, that's why I'm going towards a retreat, because I have a venue. It's a rent. My family members own the home. So and I wanted to do it for, gosh, since I've been going to this island in North Carolina for 15 years. It's been like, oh my gosh, retreats. And now I'm like, I'm just going to go for it. But people think that you get paid to do a podcast. Well, I'm there to tell you, I'm sure you know this too, that it is not, unless you have sponsors and all of that. And it can be a lonely type of endeavor. So
yeah. I think I saw actually it was a reel on Instagram yesterday, and it was by a YouTuber, not in this space, a different space. I haven't seen her before. She just popped up, and she had one, and I thought it was really good. And she put through like how many years and how much she's made over the years of being a YouTuber. And I can't remember when she started, but she's been a YouTuber, it was like 10 years or something. It's quite a long time. And she's earning really good money now. But for the first, I think it was like 6 years or something, she earned absolutely nothing from her channel. Like, she's put in a lot of work. And I think that's a problem. People see it with like celebrities as well. They're like, oh, like that actor is so famous, they just suddenly came out of nowhere. And you're like, well, you didn't see the 10 to 15 years of slogging that they put into it out of passion and love for it before they actually saw any of those accomplishments. So I think that's important to remember when you're comparing yourself as well. You can't see the background. And maybe one day we will be making money from our podcasts, but only because we've put a lot of effort into it to begin with. And
I think also just
to build that.
You agreeing to be on the podcast is because you had written something. I think it was in your newsletter. That was, I think, a 2025 goal of yours, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it is. Be on podcasts.
So I'm like, okay, this is the ask right here. And that's one thing that I have learned. I'm not afraid to ask people anymore. It's like, it's status quo. If they say no, well, I didn't have them on the podcast before, I'm not going to have them on now. Maybe they'll be later. But I think with yoga or people in the wellness, or, we're givers. I'm speaking for most of all the yoga educators that I know. We're givers. And so giving other educators a platform to talk, it's like free advertisement. And also I think a lot of us are afraid to ask. And I don't know why that is. But
I'm not sure. I agree.
Yeah.
I've had some amazing people on my summit and the podcast, and I've had lots of people that are like, wow, you got to talk to that person, like, so impressed. And they're like, how'd you do that? And I'm like, I'm a nobody, really. I just asked. And people said yes. Like, of course you get people that are going to ghost you or say no for sure, but that's not your people, so that's fine. But you just have to ask, and people might surprise you.
Yeah, so this is my 2025 is I'm just going to ask the people. And, I have some really, really like dream people I want on the podcast. And the only thing I'm going to ask, they might not even get the message, but I'm going to ask it.
I'm the same for the summit. We can hold each other to that. I've got a few people that I've been a bit scared to ask in the past, because I'm like, I'm a nobody, but I feel like I've got a few really amazing speakers behind my belt, and I'm just gonna go out and see and ask, and you never know.
You don't know.
Yourself.
You don't know unless you ask.
If you are starting something, though, I will just add a little bit of advice, like if you want to start a podcast or whatever it is that you're doing, because I've also used to help clients get on podcasts, and Don't start with those big dream ones though. Definitely, like, you can be ambitious, but it's a good idea to have a few sort of smaller ones that are a little bit more achievable. And then once you've got a few under your belt and you can prove that you can speak or you can
Yeah.
have guests or whatever it might be, then go for the bigger.
Yeah. Well, now I've got almost 2 years doing it, so I don't feel as intimidated anymore. And I try to make it as comfortable for everybody as I possibly can because I enjoy talking to people, basically, enjoy hearing their stories. So I really wanted to ask you a certain question, but now after we're having this conversation, you've already answered it for me because I was like, do you think there's a place for older teachers online? And of course, the answer is yes. And what I'm finding is that my contemporaries, my age, they just won't attempt it. So because it's an overwhelm. It's a complete overwhelm, and I understand that.
I think the other thing about that is, do you need to be online? Like, if you're like, I find this super overwhelming, maybe it's okay that you don't go online. Like, what are your goals for stepping into the online space? And how does that align with your lifestyle and what you want to learn? Because you will have to learn some tech. Like, for sure, you can outsource a lot. Depends on your finances. You could probably outsource pretty much everything if you want to put enough money backing it. But, like, what do you want to learn? Does it align? Do you just want to teach some yoga, and can you just go to, like, do that? You can still do that locally, and that's available to us now, depending on where you are, and just have a small class in your community. So I think like there is a space for sure for older yogis in the online space. There's so many people online. There's something for everyone. There's like one huge YouTuber that I follow. She's in her 70s and she only just started practicing, I think she's in her 80s and she started practicing in her 60s or something. So like she's very inspirational. But yeah, like, do you need to be? If you find it so overwhelming and it's not something you even want to learn and spend your time doing, because like as we've said, it's a labor of love to create these online content and there is a lot going into it. If it's not something that interests you, then do you need to? Is that something that aligns?
I think my initial was I wanted to make more income, and I thought being online. Now I created a lot of workshops and series, and I taught one of them in person. I did one online last October. It took me 3 months to figure out how to get it onto my platform, and I had 6 people. That's a win. Now, and I want to do it again. I have a little bit more skill. So my mindset has changed. It's not going to make a lot of money quickly. So
it's not a quick, like, I think that's a lot of the sort of false narrative. It's not necessarily easy and it's not necessarily like quick. There is the potential there to learn a lot for sure. We've seen it. There's plenty of people doing it. We know that's possible, but you're going to have to put work in. And there's no quick, easy in whatever industry. I don't think there's no like fast, easy way to make millions. Some people do, but they're the few majority out of the math.
It's the marketing. It's fast. It's easy. You can have your website up in 30 minutes, and I'm like, what are you talking about? It's like I don't even know.
You can get your website up pretty fast, but then you're going to have to market that website and get people on the website. It's not just a matter of having a website and it all kind of works out.
There's my website for almost 3 years, and now you're going to help me with a landing page because I haven't been able to. Crazy, but
yeah, that's our practice as well teaches us that, like it's the journey for everything rather than the destination. So I think you have to enjoy the journey of trying to learn to be in the online space and trying to learn this part. And if you really don't enjoy that journey, is that something you want to spend your beautiful finite time doing, I guess, because it's not going to be necessarily easy and it's not going to be a quick fix for money and it's not going to be any of those things. But is it something
you take away the joy of the joy of how whatever yoga brings into your life, it might take away that joy. Because there's been, I don't know about you, but there's many times where I've just been ready to say, screw it, not doing it. But then I'm like, oh, but no, it's, there's small little wins that I have to remember and go, it's,
Yes, definitely remember the small wins.
so can people still watch your All Mats Taken, or they can watch it at any time, right? It's
the summit. So the podcast's available all the time, obviously. The summit is only available during the summit. Unless you pay and you upgrade, then you'll get it ongoing and you can watch all the videos at any time. But for the free one, just it's expensive and things. I can't host that permanently in the way that I would like to. So that's available if you just want the free version. That's just available during the free event, and it'll be about, I think it's 48 hours. You get to watch all of the presentations. So you have plenty of time depending on what time zone you're in.
Awesome. And how has your experience becoming, is this your first child?
Yes.
How has that changed any part about your practice or your philosophies, or has it changed?
I've lost my asana practice basically because somebody doesn't let me get on my mat. I'm a single mom as well, so I don't like have all the time. He's all my time. So definitely a lot deeper into like the philosophy, which has been really beautiful. And he's an amazing teacher. So just reminding me like patience and just reflection of everything that I've learned and reminding me to breathe. That's a very important one. So pranayama has been really important. Meditation kind of flicks in and out depending on how sleep deprived I am, but that's been a really great source to help me get to sleep. So I definitely dived a lot deeper into philosophy, even though I still like barely scratch the surface, but in terms of how my practice looks and just not even always necessarily like studying the sutras or anything. I want to do that more. That's a goal for this year. But just in terms of how I'm applying that, what I have already learned into my daily life, and actually rather than it just sort of being theory, I guess, more application. Because it's a lot. And I also, throughout my pregnancy, my appendix burst when I was pregnant. So I had to have surgery and I was in hospital for quite a while, and that was a big thing. And so my practice, that I feel like what I've learned up till date has just been like supporting me in the last kind of year and a half, rather than me dedicating to it and giving back to it. But everything that I've sort of accumulated up till now has been there to like really have my back, and then it's starting to get back to my time that I have to start dedicating to it again as well. But
the good news is that yoga is always there for you when you're ready. I mean, I've had to let my practice go during times of turmoil and upheaval in my life and heartbreak and things like that, where that was the last, literally I call my mat Dr. Matt. I'm like, here I am today, Dr. Matt. Like, she's my therapist. So literally during a really tumultuous time, I didn't unroll her for a long, long time. And then when I did unroll her, I was in child's pose weeping for a week or two. But the yoga is always there. And it's not keeping, where are you? It's just waiting for you when you're ready to, or have a minute or have a breath. So that's what I love about the practice. And it's always teaching us something, always.
And you can practice yoga without practicing asana. Like that's just the tiniest little, I think that gets like overwhelmed a lot in our culture, is like yoga is asana and that's the main practice. But I think, and people that I know that have been practicing for longer, like the asana portion becomes much less important. And so it can be kind of tricky though explaining it to people when you're like, wow, I don't actually practice on my mat at the moment, but I'm still practicing yoga in what I consider probably a lot deeper ways than when I'm on my mat. It's still, I need the physical side of it as well, but yeah, there's so much more of it. There's so
Yeah,
much more, which is what makes it so cool.
it does. It is. And it is very, that's happening to me. Like I do practice, I meditate every day, and sometimes it's 5 minutes, sometimes it's 35 minutes, just depends. And I do roll out my mat almost daily, but some days I do a 15-minute practice. Some days I do a yin practice. Some days I just lay there. Some days I'm feeling, it just depends on how I'm feeling. But I think people think that yoga is just the asana portion of it. It's because that's the way it's marketed here, at least in the United States. It's marketed where you're just in, yoga clothes and the typical, it's changing a little bit, but the typical very thin, flexible woman is, holding her foot up behind her head, or, doing a crazy pose that, unless you're in the circus, most people will never ever be able to do. And that's why they're like, why would I want to do that?
Yeah.
So it's nuts. But I'm glad that you have your little one and he's teaching you. And I just have two more questions for you. So in your yoga journey, of course, you're going to do the summit coming up. Is there anything beyond that you have that's brewing around beyond the summit?
Yeah, so I just started teaching yin again, so that's been really fun. I just had my first class this Wednesday, so 2 days ago. So that was very exciting. So in terms of like my yoga practice and teaching, then like ultimately I would love to do retreats. I just think they would be so much fun, and just because I love organizing stuff from an organizational perspective, the challenge of running that and pulling it off just sounds very exciting to me. Just probably not why everyone wants one, but I'd love to organize it all. So I'd love to do retreats, but I don't know how long or what form that takes, but that's something in the future. And then just continuing with the podcast and helping, I really want to see that grow more. So that's like a goal of mine, to figure out some sort of marketing tactics to really see that grow, that community grow.
Yeah.
So there's kind of like two kind of angles for the teachers and then for the students.
Yes. I'll keep you posted how the retreat goes. Maybe we can do one together. Who knows? You never know.
Exciting. Yeah.
Exciting. And this is what I ask everyone. I always send out the potential questions I'm going to ask in advance. But this one, I ask everyone. It's not a trick question, but I didn't send it to you. So usually the question is posed, knowing all you know now with all your life experience, people usually say, well, what would you tell your younger self? But I like to reposition the question, knowing all you know now with all your life experience, what do you want to tell your older self?
Just thank you. That's my older self looking back. Thank you for everything that you've done and helped me with, and held space for me while I was struggling. And wherever you are now, then I appreciate that, and I appreciate that that's the journey you've been on to get to whatever space it was. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you is a great message to tell yourself at any time, but especially yes. And so I'm going to post all of your links, Adrianne, so people are able to find you. And I just want to thank you so much. I know we were talking before, I was stressing our time difference is 18 hours. And that was my most nervous part of today was, did I get the time right? But I want to thank you so much for being on the podcast and sharing your insights and your wisdom, and being my first international guest.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I love how it sort of just connected in a couple of days. So I appreciate you inviting me on and letting me share. And I hope that this was valuable for any of your listeners. So thank you so much. And yes, I get the time difference thing. That's one of my biggest stresses through the summit, constantly checking the time difference.
All right. Well, thank you again, Adrianne, and take care.
You too. Well,
as promised, here is your mudra for this episode. Today, the mudra is called Hakini. I think I'm pronouncing it correctly. If I'm butchering the Sanskrit, please have patience with me. Hakini, Hakini, I think it's either or. And this mudra is named after a Hindu goddess. And this goddess, she's depicted with pale skin. She has 6 heads. She's sitting on a lotus flower, and she has 4 arms. So she is the Hakim is the word derived from that Sanskrit word Hakini, and it means power. So this mudra symbolizes the harnessing of mental power through focused awareness. And again, the mudras that we do, they're called Hasta mudras. Hasta means hand in Sanskrit. And so this mudra is really widely used. You may have seen many leaders, teachers holding their hands like this while they're speaking. I do it myself. And it's a way to join right and left hemispheres. It's a way to stay focused. It's a way to stay present. So, and it also means power. It means to rule. And it's believed to give the practitioner power over your mind. And how to practice it is you bring your hands together and then you just let your fingertips gently touch. So this is Hakini Mudra. There's air in between. And the hands can be at your heart, they can be at your lap, they can be raised over your head. Third eye chakra is where the center of the forehead. But it can be practiced mostly in a seated position for your Sukhasana, easy pose, or Padmasana, lotus pose, in which the spine remains upright. So any of those poses. And the benefits of this pose, it can boost your brain power and improve your memory. It increases the sense of calmness and deepens your breathing, increases oxygen levels, improves your concentration and focus. And I always say this, it doesn't happen immediately. These mudras need to be practiced. And as you're in meditation for at least 15 minutes or so, for you to feel the benefits. It's like the benefits are cumulative. They add up. So they also call this the power gesture. And again, a lot of trained speakers use this mudra. And for me, it makes me feel a little bit more confident and a little bit more settled. And many yoga practitioners use this mudra as well. So yeah, that's really it. It's pretty easy. Just bring your fingertips together. There's air inside. It's just a gentle touch of the fingertips. Place them at your lap or at your heart center. And again, it's important not to expect results right away. The more consistently you're able to practice, then the more powerful it will become, as with anything in our lives. So thank you so much for joining me on this episode of The Youthful Older Yogi. And until we meet again, keep sharing yoga. Namaste.
Thank you so much for listening. Now you can go to my show notes on YouTube or Buzzsprout and send me a voicemail or email. I'd love to hear what topics you'd like me to speak about, what your thoughts are on the episodes, and maybe I'll share your message on a future episode. Please subscribe to my website, shareyogawithmj.com, so you can receive my newsletters and be first to know about my retreats, workshops, courses, and freebies. If you navigate on social media, you can find me mostly on Facebook and a bit on Instagram at Mary Jane Waddell. That's Jane with a Y, Jayne. This podcast would not be possible without the help of my editor, Dan Jones from Cocoa Beach Productions. You can find Dan at cocoabeachweb.com. And of course, thanks to my generous guests who share their time, insights, and youthful wisdom. Remember, the Youthful Older Yogi podcast is presented solely for educational, inspirational, and entertainment purposes. It is not intended as a substitute for a physician or other qualified professionals. Okay, yogis, stay well, stay youthful, and keep sharing yoga.